Okay, the title of this video might be a bit dramatic. Alright, it's a lot of dramatic, because this is less of a problem with weapon tier list and more, this is a random thought that popped into my head and I wanted to make a video about it because it was fun. I feel like it's kinda obvious why this isn't the title of the video. Weapon tier list. Putting aside the fact that I am probably the least qualified person to talk about this, placing these weapons in a tier list and ranking them on how good they are feels a bit off. Mostly because it makes weapons look worse than they actually play. And I'm not saying there isn't a difference in how good weapons are, because there is. A weapon like Achilles has a significantly better gimmick than something like Guan Yu. I don't think anyone's gonna argue when I say that getting your health cut in half is worse than getting 150% damage boost to all of your attacks. Not to mention the insane amount of mobility versus this horrible spin and lifesteal. But even in this situation, Guan Yu isn't actually that much worse than Achilles. From looking at the gimmicks and the weapon style, you wouldn't really think that, but when you actually play around with it, surprisingly, you can use Guan Yu while somewhat keeping up with Achilles. This is kind of the beauty of Hades being a roguelike, or roguelite to be more accurate. It's less dependent on what weapon you choose to play with and more what you're going to get in a run. Making it so using and ranking weapons are really affected by your personal playstyle. Achilles and Gilgamesh are great for people who like a more mobile playstyle. Opposite of that is something like Hera or Arthur, who are slow-ish weapons with a good oomph to their attacks. There's also more niche options like Hades if you like using the spear spin, or really gimmicky ones like Malphon's dodge chance stacking. I get that there are weapons like Beowulf or Eris who are just better than a lot of weapons. They can do amazing damage and are highly flexible with their builds. There's no doubt about that. But that doesn't mean that the other weapons in the game are absolute dumpster fires compared to them. Zeus and Chaos are right there behind Beowulf, so is Lucifer's lasers and Hestia's super shots when compared to Eris. Not even Aegis and Exegriff are that far behind with their extra damage and ammo respectively. It's just what happens when you have a really well-balanced game. And also because Supergiant games are just good game devs. The only time the weapon you use will impact your runs is when you're using the Pact of Punishment. And even then it'll only kick in at higher heat levels. While we're at it, I might as well talk a bit about my tier list since I did make them. And since this video is titled A Problem with Weapon Tier List, it would be a crime if I didn't include the tier list that I made myself. Though to be fair, this isn't really a "this is objectively better than the others" tier list. I feel like a good example to that is in the swords. Arthur is not what I would call a good weapon when compared to Nemesis or Poseidon. Now it can do a lot of damage a hit, and it has a nice safety net with the health and the aura. But because of its slow nature, hitting enemies with a full combo isn't always a guarantee, with the last hit of the combo being surprisingly risky at times. But even with that, if I pull out my tier list for the weapons, you can see that I put Arthur above all of the other swords. Because it's just plain old fun swinging this thing around, hitting people in the face with it. Crits are super satisfying to get, especially if you crit on the last swing. Deflex lets you play baseball with projectiles, and doing literally nothing while watching everything die around you, which now that I say it out loud sounds really sad, but it doesn't change the fact that it's hilarious to see an AFK build in-game. That isn't the only example in my tier list either. Hera being able to do a lot more damage a lot quicker compared to Chiron, but because Chiron works so well with Dionysus, and I am a Dionysus boy, it sits above Hera. The majority of gauntlets end up being down here, even though they're not actually that bad. I just end up getting all poo brain when using them and end up doing a HADES, leading to me dying. It's especially the case with Gilgamesh, but all of the gauntlets are like that. Demeter all the way up there is no exception. It's up there because of the super special. Specifically having kinetic launcher and Poseidon on special because... Do I really have to explain why I like this so much? And of course we can't forget about the boy at the bottom! Okay, I give a lot of hate to Guan Yu, and I think the majority also agrees that it sucks. But the only reason I hate using it was because it feels weird to use. The spin being bad and your health getting cut doesn't really bother me that much. Now that I've warmed up a bit to it though, it's honestly not that bad. I still don't like it. I just don't hate it as much anymore. I will say though, in practice, I do better with Guan Yu than I do with Achilles. Maybe because I'm not as reckless with Guan Yu for obvious reasons. I don't know, maybe in a week or so Guan Yu is going to be replacing Achilles as my best spear, though for now, the Speedy Boy is still safely on top. Oh, and I'm not gonna talk about builds because this is a roguelite. You can make every weapon in this game broken if you have the right combinations. Not to mention the fact that I'm not very qualified to talk about any of that. Or any of this actually. I just did this for fun. Anyways, after this horrendous topic of a video, there's one thing that I know for sure. Hades is a surprisingly well-balanced game that is hilariously fun to play. And we have Super Giant Games and their community to thank for that. I don't know where this is gonna go or pop up in. Probably in the end now that I actually think about it. But this is just a little extra thing to this entire debacle. If there's one type of weapon I would say is the best in the game, it's no contest the shields. Being able to block attacks, while either being mobile or shooting something, is too good of an ability to have. An accurate tier list would probably look like this. A for the good weapons, S for the better weapons, and shields. Because blocking is just that good.